When you switch the grinder on, in this instance, it will automatically grind coffee. Yeah? And in this grinder, there's a little rocker switch, so that when the grinder, the grind chamber here is full, it will stop. So in a busy environment, you can have the machine operating to grind continuously until such times as it's full. If you switch it off, then you can run down the coffee and you can switch it on again and you can fill it up again. Yeah? It will stop automatically. Now, there's another piece of learning that I want to underline here, and that is when we talked about 8 hours of freshness when it comes to that ground coffee, then if your coffee is in here pre-ground for any more than 8 hours, it's becoming stale. Yeah? So, what we say to the operator is, as you approach an end of service, switch the grinder off and use up the coffee. Don't have coffee ground in the grinder overnight. Yeah? Important thing that the grinder does, evidently, is to grind the coffee to a certain fineness that permits the water and the coffee to fight together to draw most flavour. Now, in my experience visiting operations to conduct training, and Leeds was a good example, Josie, as I arrived to go through all the preparatory stages, I discovered that the grind consistency on the machine in situ was too coarse. And as a result, the water was whistling through the coffee and was not drawing the appropriate flavour. Very nice coffee delivered in a valve-sealed bag and opened freshly and properly poured into the machine and keeping it fresh, but then being ground too coarsely, and the result, a very bad one. You know? And that's, it's worth underlining that, because the very best coffee in the world can be delivered to the back door and be, totally wasted in that simple thing. Is what the grind should feel like. We talk about something a bit like between baker's flour and table salt. Yeah? If you can imagine that as a fineness, and it's marked with coarser clockwise. That's a general rule, coarser clockwise, and finer anti-clockwise, and you can see that. And there's a little button that you depress here that permits you to adjust the collar. Yeah? And in so doing, you're moving two sets of grinding teeth closer together or further apart. And it's that closeness that determines the consistency of the grind at the end of the day. Yeah? The other thing to say about the grinder is that it's armed with the lever that permits you to dispense a single measure of coffee, or a double measure when you're making two. And that lever dispenses precisely 7 grams of coffee, providing this spindle has been adjusted to allow you that 7 grams as it dispenses. So, in the ideal world, you would want 7 grams of Massimo coffee, finely ground, to deliver 30 mils of espresso coffee. Dispensing with the used ground coffee, it's important that you knock the portafilter on the rubber bar so that you do not damage the rim of the portafilter. Yeah? Water in the boiler is not the water that's used to brew the coffee. The water in the boiler is used to deliver hot water for tea or for Americanos, and to produce steam to froth milk, but it's not the water that passes through the coffee. The water that passes through the coffee is mains water that has been pumped through the water in the boiler in a heat exchange way to heat the water sufficient to the temperature that you require to extract the flavour from the coffee. Handles, whilst you're in operating mode, should always be stored on the group heads. Yeah? It's another common sign of someone that hasn't been trained properly. If you go into a bar, and it tends to be bars rather than restaurants, because the restaurateur pays more attention in our experience, but in the bar, it's not uncommon to visit and discover that the portafilters are stored here, and then someone comes in and says, can I have 2 cappuccinos please? And these cold portafilters are used and the coffee is rejected because it's not hot enough. That happens. You need to leave the coffee machine on overnight. And when the machine's permitted to cool down, then the metallic parts will contract. And then when it's asked to heat up, they'll expand. And that contracting and expanding will shorten the working life of the machine over time. Yeah? So that's precisely what it's about. Reducing the amount of consumed electricity and lengthening the working life of your coffee machine. Yeah. During operating times, we recommend that the group handles are stored on the machine. Overnight, we recommend that you remove the group handles ready to replace them when you start operating the next day. And the reason that we do that is because when the group handle's locked in overnight and it's not taken off the rubber to give the rubber a chance to recover, the rubber will become hard if it's there for 8 hours. Doing a single or a double shot of espresso to kick the process off. And depending on whether a single or a double shot will depend which portafilter you select. Yeah? There's the obvious single spout or double spout. There's the less obvious sieve size. And you'll notice here in the single portafilter, the sieve size is a great deal smaller. Yeah? About the size of an old 10 pence versus a complete portafilter size. Why?
Because you're having less water go through the single.
In actual fact, when you brew a double shot, you're using twice the amount of water as you would with a single shot. But that's not the reason that the sieve sizes are different. What you need in order to extract the perfect flavour is a certain pressure gradient. You've got to force the coffee and the water to fight with each other so that the coffee gives up its flavour. If you were to dispense a single shot of coffee onto the double portafilter, you would not achieve that pressure gradient because the sieve size is too big. You need a smaller sieve size to force more pressure to draw flavour when you're using a single shot of coffee. So, another point worth underlining, look out for the portafilters that have been mixed up. Yeah? It's not unusual to find a single portafilter basket in a double portafilter handle and vice versa. Yeah? So, the process to make a single shot of espresso, or a double shot for that matter. Remove the appropriate group handle from the machine. Flush the group head. Why? You're making sure that the temperature in the group head's exactly as it should be, and you're freshening the water ready for the next shot of coffee. All of these things are worthwhile doing. Take the portafilter, lay it on the cradle, a double shot, 1 pull of coffee, and let the handle bounce back. 2 pulls of coffee, and let it bounce back. You're filling the next chamber with the bash. You know, if you carefully let it go back, as is often happens in practice, then you fail to fill the next chamber. If you're on the continent watching baristas who tend to be aging gentlemen in Italy, you know, it's a real skill set. They attach a huge importance to it. The barista often, when he's making the coffee like that, you let the handle bounce back, and he hits the grinder as well as another step to make sure he fills the the portafilter. Tamp the coffee, making sure that the tamp fits precisely onto the portafilter, and push it firmly and twist it so that you get a lovely flat surface, a smooth flat surface, and that again is going to force the water and coffee to fight more. Then, with the rim of your hand, just remove the ground coffee from the rim, and that's for the same reason as you want to make sure this is not scarred. You're taking away the sandpaper effect. You're saving the seal on your coffee machine when you do that. Lock the portafilter in place, select the appropriate cup, and I'll use this glass to demonstrate the flow and what have you from the perfect espresso shot. Now, if everything is correct, if all these factors, the grind of the coffee, the freshness of the coffee, the amount of coffee, the temperature of the portafilter, the pressure in the machine, the firmness and polish of the tap, if all these things are correct, then the perfect espresso shot will deliver 30 mils in a time frame between 20 and 25 seconds. 10 seconds to, and I'll push the button. Now, if all these things are correct, yeah, what will happen is that this process will deliver a lovely creamy espresso that looks like a mini pint of Guinness for all the people that operate in the pub industry, that has a lovely crema, and that takes between 20 and 25 seconds, that's 24 seconds, to produce this finished article. And the way to judge its quality, aside from the taste, evidently, is in the depth of the crema that's presented on the espresso shot.
What we're going to do is, over the cappuccino latte, cappuccino milk, or latte milk, cappuccino milk should have more foam in it, the latte milk should be a bit thinner latte, cappuccino a bit thicker. Basically that's it. It's where you position the steam wand in the milk that determines how you get that foam or latte bubble in it. So we'll do a cappuccino first of all in this size of cup. Temperature should go to should be 140, 150 Fahrenheit, 62, 63 centigrade. No higher than that, you start to boil it, so it should be that temperature. Whatever size your jug that you're going to use, always half a roll. For a cappuccino, you're going to double the volume. So you have the milk up to here. For a cappuccino, over the top, what's the right temperature? So always half of the roll. I normally judge it by this sort of level of the foamage jug, if you have that type of foamage. We're going to use a thermometer. So it should be anywhere on the red, you see it, and that's the sort of temperature you're going to cut it off at. So we'll make our espresso base. Set it here. If you haven't used the steam one for a short while, just purge it, get rid of any water that's in it. You don't want to put water in the milk. So just get rid of that. So right under the milk, switch it on, pull it back, and hear that sort of hissing noise. If the milk expands, just keep it coming down with it. If it's that warm, you can't touch it. Just down to the bottom and switch it off. It should be like pourable foam, a micro bubble lattice. That's what they say it should be. I like to see, always important every time you use the steam wand, you wipe it and you purge it. Cappuccino, just pour it from here.
Gorgeous.
So under the milk, switch it right on. Go to the top for a few seconds, and then further in. So it is a bit deeper in the milk than it would be for cappuccino. Try and avoid hitting the bottom of the foaming jug, you get a bit of. And always wipe it and purge it. The milk this time is a bit thinner. I'm going to pour it from here for a latte.